Some dates in history are about decisive action. Others are about insidious failure. December 23rd is a day of moral surrender, a day when America, often quietly, chose fear over compassion, propaganda over truth, and greed over stability, laying the groundwork for future disasters. Welcome. The greatest mistakes aren't always a wrong turn on the battlefield. Sometimes they're the laws we pass, the stories we broadcast, or the safeguards we dismantle. Today, we're examining December 23rd, a day that reveals how America has repeatedly compromised its soul, with consequences echoing for generations. We'll analyze 4 critical failures from this date. Each represents a surrender in a different arena. The surrender of our ideals as a nation of immigrants, the surrender of journalistic integrity to propaganda, the surrender of financial regulation to recklessness, and the surrender of democratic norms to partisan power. The surrenders. Surrender number 1, the Immigration Act of 1929. Surrender to nativism and xenophobia. On December 23, 1929, the State Department announced the strict enforcement of the 1924 Immigration Act's national origins formula, effectively slamming the door on Southern and Eastern Europeans and banning Asians almost entirely. The context. This came just 2 months after the stock market crash. The law was rooted in pseudo-scientific eugenics and a fear of foreign radicals. The moral failure. At a moment of global crisis, America surrendered to its worst instincts of nativism and racism. It wasn't an economic policy, it was an ideological one that declared certain nationalities and races undesirable. This policy would have dire consequences in the 1930s, as it systematically turned away Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi Germany. We surrendered our identity as a haven for the huddled masses. Surrender number 2, the launch of Music and Spoken Word by Tokyo Rose, 1943. Surrender to propaganda's allure, a case study in vulnerability. On December 23, 1943, the infamous Japanese propaganda radio program aimed at American GIs, often lumped under the nickname Tokyo Rose, significantly expanded its broadcast of Music and Spoken Word from Radio Tokyo. The context. In the brutal Pacific Theater, homesick and weary American soldiers would listen to these broadcasts for the American music, despite the interspersed, demoralizing commentary. The surrender. Psychological, not strategic. This date highlights a different kind of surrender. The vulnerability of the American mind to psychological warfare. While militarily ineffective, it forced the U.S. to confront the morale of its troops. The mistake was the later, post-war scapegoating of Eva Toguri, an American citizen caught in Japan, who was unfairly convicted of treason in a show trial fueled more by racial animus and the desire for a propaganda villain than by evidence. We surrendered due process to the need for a wartime narrative. Surrender number 3, the Fed's emergency loan to Bank of America, 2008. Surrender of financial responsibility. On December 23, 2008, in a secret emergency move, the Federal Reserve approved a $118 billion loan package to prop up Bank of America, which was teetering after its disastrous acquisition of Merrill Lynch. The necessary action. Officially, this was to prevent a complete collapse of the financial system, too big to fail in action. The moral hazard and surrender. This was the ultimate surrender of free market principles and accountability. It signaled that the most reckless players would be saved by the public treasury, while ordinary Americans lost their homes and jobs. The mistake was cementing a system of privatized gains and socialized losses, rewarding the very behavior that caused the crisis and guaranteeing it would happen again. We surrendered the rule of the market to the rule of the bailout. Surrender number 4, The pardoning of the Russiagate contempt. Convictions, 2020. Surrender of congressional authority. On December 23, 2020, President Donald Trump issued a wave of pardons that included individuals convicted of crimes stemming from the Mueller investigation, specifically for contempt of Congress and witness tampering. The context: these were not mere policy disagreements. These were convictions for obstructing the lawful oversight powers of Congress. The surrender of a check on power. The pardons themselves were a constitutional act, but collectively, on this date, they represented a profound surrender of a core democratic norm: that no one is above the law, and that Congress's power to investigate the executive branch must be respected. By nullifying the consequences for defying Congress, it eroded a critical check on presidential power, setting a dangerous precedent that partisanship could shield allies from accountability. It was a surrender of institutional integrity to political tribalism. The common thread: connecting the dots. Xenophobia in 1929, propaganda, warfare in 1943, the bailout in 2008, the pardons in 2020. These are not similar events, but they are failures of the same character: moral and institutional surrender. Surrender to fear. 1929 immigration, choosing exclusion over the nation's founding idealism. Surrender to narrative. Tokyo Rose and trial, letting wartime emotion override legal justice. Surrender to power. 2008 bailout, 2020 pardons. Allowing powerful institutions, banks, the presidency, to operate outside the rules designed to constrain them. The unifying consequence: erosion. The legacy of December 23rd is erosion. Each surrender didn't just cause an immediate problem, it gnawed away at a foundational American principle: openness, fair play, accountability, and separated powers. These are the death by a thousand cuts mistakes. They happen in offices and courtrooms, not on beaches or battlefields, and they make the country less resilient, less just, and less trusting with each passing year. Conclusion: which of these quiet surrenders do you think has done the most lasting damage to the American system? Is it the legacy of nativism, the normalization of bailouts, the weaponization of pardons, or something else? Let's discuss in the comments. If you value these deep dives into history's pivotal choices, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching.